Hello again. We have in Britain a number of secular saints whose memory we treasure. Florence Nightingale is one such. Another is Dr. Thomas Barnardo, who founded a chain of orphanages and children's homes. He was the very epitome of the Victorian philanthropist, and the organisation which he began is still going strong as Barnardo's. This is only part of the story, though, for there is a darker and more sinister aspect to Dr. Barnardo's activities, which has today been almost entirely forgotten. I have access to newspaper archives dating back a couple of hundred years, and looking through them and reading what Dr. Barnardo actually got up to is an astounding experience. Thomas John Barnardo was born in Dublin in 1845. His father was a German Jew, and his early childhood wasn't really a happy one. The family used to shut him out the way when they had visitors. In 1866 he moved to London because he wanted to become a Christian missionary. He combined this ambition with training to be a doctor. He never actually qualified as a doctor, although he used the title freely. In London he saw so many ragged and ill-fed children that he decided that rather than go off to China to spread the word of God, he should preach at home and rescue children from destitution. It is at that point that things get a little murky and distinctly unpleasant. Most of us have the idea that Dr. Barnardo rescued orphans and took them into his care. The fact is he roamed London like the child catcher in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, snatching children from the streets and carrying them off to his establishments. Many of these children had mothers and fathers, but Barnardo thought that he was better able to look after their children than their own parents. Some of the mothers were not married, and he thought that he was justified in taking their children and, if he felt it necessary, sending them abroad so they would never see their parents again. Here is what he said. I have rescued, or if abducted, you will, little boys and girls from the custody of parents and guardians who were, to my knowledge, leading infamous and immoral lives, or who were, by their conduct, about to inflict upon unfortunate children in their care grievous wrong. Dr. Barnardo was quite shameless about this, and as a consequence found himself embroiled in many court cases. He appeared in court no fewer than 88 times on charges of kidnap, making him by far the most prolific kidnapper in British history. Because he was so respectable and well known, he was never convicted of kidnap, but he was found guilty of other things. Here is a case in 1889 when he was found to be in contempt of court. This is from the Tower Hamlets Independent and East End Local Advertiser for June the 1st, 1889, and the headline is Dr. Barnardo in Contempt. An important point has been decided by the judgment in the case of Ty versus Dr. Barnardo. Stripped of all technicality, the circumstances briefly stated are these. And apparently a young girl was taken to one of Dr. Barnardo's homes. The mother was apparently not married at the time, and Dr. Barnardo thought the girl was being brought up in the midst of unwholesome surroundings. Subsequently, the mother married and demanded that her child should be given up to her. With this request, Dr. Barnardo declined to comply. Fearing that legal proceedings would be taken and that he would be compelled to surrender the custody of the child, he had her secretly conveyed out of the country. The mother, finding the girl had been spirited away, took out a writ of habeas corpus. Yes, here's another case which ended up in the High Court, and he was almost sent to prison for contempt. The headline here is The Action Against Dr. Barnardo. This is from the Sheffield Evening Telegraph, 16th of May 1890. In the Queen's Bench Division today, arguments were concluded on the application to compel Dr. Barnardo to give up a boy named McHugh, that he might be transferred to a Roman Catholic institution. The court decided to see the boy privately and to give judgment on Tuesday. This kind of thing, children being held against their will and against the wishes of their parents and then smuggled out of the country, is not at all what we think of when we remember Dr. Barnardo. From time to time there's new information about the scandal of British children being sent to Australia or Canada in the 20th century, a practice which continued even after the end of the Second World War. These child migrants were following a practice which was originally started by Dr. Barnardo. He sent a lot of children to Canada, especially if he wanted to make sure their parents would never see them again. Once he'd got hold of a child, he would never return it to the parents, even if that meant defying the High Court and ignoring a writ of habeas corpus. There were several judicial inquiries into the homes which Barnardo ran. Here's one which was set up in 1877, and this is from the Sheffield Independent, 18th of July, 1877. It's headed Charges Against Dr. Barnardo. Dr. Barnardo defending himself from the charges made against his own personal trustworthiness and the management of the institutions under his care, an inquiry which is being conducted before Mr. Moore, QC, Recorder of Leeds, the Reverend Canon Miller, and the MP for Glasgow. Again, not quite what we remember of Dr. Barnardo. Readers interested in Jack the Ripper, going off a slight tangent, will be aware of 4 features of the murders which often crop up. These are that the man committing the murders might have had some medical or surgical training, that he could be a Jew, and that there might be some connection with Freemasonry. Another point often raised is the way that the murderer seemed able to move around the East End of London without being noticed. Dr. Barnardo fits in neatly with these 4 points. He was half Jewish, he was a Freemason, a member of the Shadwell Clark Lodge, and had studied surgery. He was a familiar figure in the East End and was seen around Whitechapel a lot by the police. Even when a connection was shown between him and the victims, they didn't ask him too many questions, he was too respectable. On September 30th, 1888, the third of the Ripper's victims was murdered, Elizabeth Stride, known as Long Liz. Barnardo knew her and had conducted a prayer meeting at a lodging house in Spitalfields on Wednesday the 26th of September, at which Stride had been present, just 4 days before she was murdered. The theory that Dr. Barnardo might have been Jack the Ripper was mentioned in a book published in 1970. The chances he really was the infamous killer, though, are probably fairly slender. What is certain, though, is that he was a strange and not especially pleasant man, who was quite happy to snatch other people's children and smuggle them out of the country if he felt it necessary. Not at all the image we have of him today.